For our next speakers, I'd like to introduce Graciela Garcia-Torres and Ana Ampania. Graciela Garcia-Torres is the Director of Multilingual Education Services and the California Region 3 Title III lead at the Sacramento County Office of Education. She collaborates with county, district, school, and charter educators to support their efforts in building equitable practices and responsive environments for multilingual English learner students. Ana Ampania is a curriculum specialist at the Sacramento County Office of Education Multilingual Education Department, supporting multilingual English learner programs. With more than 20 years of experience in education, Ana has served as a classroom teacher, instructional coach, and site administrator. Please join me in welcoming Graciela Garcia-Torres and Ana Ampania.
Good morning. Buenos dias. We are pleased to present on an important topic that is essential for supporting language acquisition through integrated and designated English language development, ELD in Tier 1 instruction. We are with the English Learner Roadmap, powered in collaboration across California, EPIC Zone A. My name is Graciela Garcia-Torres, and I am joined by Ana Ampania. We are with the Multilingual Education Department at the Sacramento County Office of Education. I have a situation that I can't see my slides, so I'm going to have to add, Ana, would you advance the slides, please? In this session, we will provide a comprehensive overview of integrated and designated language development, ELD, emphasizing the critical roles that coaches, principals, district, and county administrators play in supporting multilingual English learners. We will clearly delineate the differences and connections between integrated and designated ELD, highlighting how both approaches complement each other. Additionally, we will emphasize the necessity of aligning our efforts with the English Learner Roadmap, the ELD standards, and the English Language Arts English Language Development Framework to ensure effective instruction and support to empower multilingual English learners in their educational journey. So take a moment to reflect on your students that you serve and the experiences that you had, or a student in particular. What word or phrase or feeling comes to mind when you think of English learners? Please use the chat to share your thoughts. Thank you. Resiliency, gifted, talented, hardworking, another hardworking. They have to work so hard. Emergent bilinguals, competent, exceptional. Thank you. Gracious, such lovely words. Bilingual. Thank you for that. Wonderful. Those are experiences, and those are words that definitely align to an asset space and aspirational. So in the next slide, we talk about let's start with the basics on how a student becomes classified as an English learner. In California, students in K-12, upon enrollment in a public school system, the system uses a standardized procedure to determine a student's primary language. The English learner identification begins at registration with the home language survey. The survey is completed once by the parent or guardian at the time of the student is initially enrolled. Based on the student's responses, a student is identified as either English only or as having a language other than English, or the LOTE, LOTE. If a student is identified as English only, they are placed directly in the mainstream program without EL services. Conversely, if a student has a LOTE, or a language other than English, they will take the initial LPAC, the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California. If they score proficient, they will be classified as IFEP, Initially Fluent English Proficient, and placed in the mainstream program with no additional EL services or supports. However, If they do not score proficient, they will receive English learner programs and services until they meet the criteria for reclassification as fluent English proficient. Following reclassification, the student will be monitored for 4 years to ensure continued English acquisition and adequate progress. This is the minimum expectation in California. All right, so the journey of a multilingual English learner student is a long one, and the key of their success lies on the programs and services provided to help them develop the necessary skills. This table shows and outlines the expected growth in English language acquisition required for reclassification. The level indicated in the second row refers to the summative LPAC exam, which serves as criterion 1 for reclassification at level 4. And if they take the alternate LPAC, would be at level 3. For instance, if a student scores on LPAC level 3 on their initial exam, they have a year to achieve reclassification. This information is valuable for assessing how long students remain in our program as English learners before they reclassify. It suggests that we are offering sufficient instruction and services to ensure adequate growth. The program for English learners is comprehensive ELD, which represents Tier 1 instruction. According to the ELA ELD framework on on chapter 9, on page 913, integrated and designated ELD instruction is part of the core teaching for English learners. All English learners should have access to the appropriate instructional core for their level. This is the LPAC level. While they are in specific interventions available for ELs, in MTSS, for example, these interventions should be implemented alongside Tier 1 instruction for multilingual English learners. Students, they are to remain there until they are reclassified. As we continue to provide information, we invite you to think about what Tier 1 ELD mean for your school or system. We framed this presentation around these 4 roles and provided questions to consider from your lens. As a coach or a teacher on special assignment, how can I effectively support teachers in integrating ELD standards and monitoring student progress? As a site administrator, how can I foster an environment that supports language acquisition and enhances staff capacity around the ELD standards? As a director of a district or a charter, how can I ensure district-wide ELD program effectiveness while aligning with the state and federal requirements and supporting the English Learner Roadmap implementation? And as a county office administrator and support, how can I support schools and districts in effectively implementing the roadmap and aligning with state expectations? We recognize the importance of integrating the available guiding documents to create meaning and cohesion across the state. 3 of these documents were released by the California Department of Education and adopted by the California State Board of Education. These are important as to what they mean to inform and guide the classroom implementation across the state. They contain valuable information because they are interconnected based on a large body of research for language acquisition and available for free. We have the ELD standards, the ELA ELD framework, and the EL roadmap. And we are going to be providing examples of the 3. Let's see where you are on the English Learner Roadmap. In the chat, please rate your familiarity with this roadmap. from a 1 to a 5. 1 being the lowest familiarity, perhaps today is your first touch with it. A 3 means that you know about it and perhaps you have talked to someone about it or have engaged in some activity. And a 5 means that you are someone who uses this roadmap and infuses it in their work like we are today. Please use the chat to share in this safe space. Nice. Lots of 2s and 3s. 1s, some 1s. Thank you. Wonderful. We have a 4.5. Awesome. So briefly, the California English Learner Roadmap is meant to serve as a comprehensive and visionary state policy, providing guidance for local programs, policies, and planning to ensure English learners' success. Adopted by the State Board of Education in 2017, this policy represents transformative approach to meeting the needs of our multilingual English learners by offering a unified framework grounded on equity, access, and academic excellence. It is supported by a detailed guidance documented with an array of web-based resources that empower educators, administrators, policymakers, and teachers to design and implement effective practices. The holistic policy reflects the California's commitment to leveraging the linguistic and cultural assets of its diverse student population while advancing meaningful opportunities for academic language development. From a Education Trust West document, we have what the roadmap is and what it is not. This visionary guidance provides a clear vision for educating multilingual English learners from early childhood through 12th grade and beyond. It is not a mandate or the law, which makes it more essential and aspirational. It is grounded on these 4 principles. It emphasizes the collective responsibility of schools to respect and value the identities, the languages, the cultures that English learners provide, and by providing equitable access to high quality education. Principle 1 focuses on creating assets-oriented, needs-responsive schools that recognize the leverage that strengths students bring into the communities. Principle 2 highlights the importance of intellectual quality and meaningful access to rigorous standards-based instruction that fosters linguistic and academic growth. Principle 3 and 4, it's about the systemic conditions that support programs and alignment of initiatives across grade levels and systems, ensuring cohesive support for English learners. This policy serves as a foundation for cultivating equitable and inclusive environments. So let's consider language. When you think about teaching and learning, what role does language play? You might recognize this aspect of the implementation circles in literacy. Supporting the implementation of the English Learner Roadmap is the ELA-ELD framework. It's our guiding document for the ELA and the literacy across all content areas. These are the circles of implementation as they are shared in the ELA-ELD framework. So we see that it's what we want for all students, this readiness for college, this aspect of acquiring the skills for living and learning in the 21st century. Then we see in the next circle how the context for instruction and how it should occur, integrated, motivating the students, being respectful, engaging the students. And then we see the themes, the meaning making, the aspect of language acquisition, and the context and all the aspects of foundational skills. At the center, and shown in the next slide, you see the aspect of how the center is language and how we use language to interact. And therefore, the ELD standards were designed to align with the ELA content standards. They were designed to highlight and amplify the key language knowledge, skills, and abilities in the students. So about the why, the purpose for using the language, and those functions of the language, the how, the process of how we're going to collaborate to make meaning, to produce meaningfully, and the what, the resources that are needed to know of the language, the cohesion of the structure, the expanding and enriching the ideas and combining and condensing ideas. So these standards are to be used in tandem with the content standards, not in isolation. And they were written to be fewer, clear, and of higher context. So when the ELD standards were drafted, these were the three main ideas. First, it was the law. The ELD standards had to be aligned to the Common Core, ELA, and the literacy standards. The second is that just like Common Core has integrated literacy model, the ELD standards are intended to be integrated into the cross-disciplinary literacy language development opportunities. The ELD standards highlight the kind of language and skills that English learners need to engage and access the Common Core. And lastly, ELs must have a full access to high quality English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies content, as well as the other subjects. At the same time, they are progressing through the ELD continuum. So on the next slide, we see these three parts of the ELD standards. The 19 ELD standards help teachers to plan instruction that supports students to interact in meaningful ways, whether they are collaborating with peers, interpreting what they are reading, viewing, or hearing, or producing with other contexts, the oral presentations or other creative projects. We recognize the cool colors as to how we use language, the collaborative, how they are using the language that for the purpose of sharing and growing ideas as part of the common task, interpretive, as to how the language is to make sense. The productive, how they are to generate and produce language orally and in written form. And that is the part one. These are easily woven in every class, in every subject, as to where the students are invited to think, write, talk about their learning. Then the warm colors is about the what. They are learning to use how to organize their thoughts into words, phrases, sentences, longer connections. That is part two, particularly in language and literacy coursework. How they organize text, how they grow their ideas into more complex ways, how they connect ideas to grow into new kinds of sentences and make relationships visible using the language. So, and you see that there's a part three of the ELD standards. These are the foundational skills. And the ELD standards, they don't have foundational skills standards to stand alone. However, they do provide guidance on how to address foundational reading skills for English learners based on their background, experiences, and the literacy with their home language. This guidance is provided both in the ELA-ELD framework in several chapters and in the California ELD standards publication, specifically on chapter 6. Here you see the proficiency levels that are made up of the three stages, the emerging, expanding, and bridging. Notice that the levels start with the native language as a reminder of a language acquisition and that leverage point of the skills that represent and that we can build upon the knowledge and skills that students need to acquire as they gain the second language. And it's better illustrated on the next page or the next slide. So on this next slide, you see page 20 of the ELD standards, which is our favorite page, and Anna has dropped that in the chat for us. And you see that it speaks to the emerging, expanding, and bridging, and it breaks it up into the 6 years that are essential to the progression of language acquisition. You also see at the bottom of this information regarding to the extent of linguistic support needed in the varied language levels for our English learners. So, as Anna reviews the critical components of the ELD, think about the extent of support needed by staff to achieve the knowledge and skills needed to support our students in ELD. So this slide and the next one provide the definition of integrated and designated ELD. Here we find the legislative definition for integrated and designated ELD. Proposition 58 and the regulations define this as structured English immersion as integrated and designated ELD. So, in brief, integrated ELD combines the state-adopted ELD standards with academic content standards to deliver specially designed instruction in English, ensuring all teachers of English learners can access and succeed in the core subjects. Then designated ELD is focused on instruction during a set time of the school, using the state-adopted ELD standards to help English learners build essential English skills and for academic success. All English learners are to have both integrated and designated ELD. We have connected the policy with the standards and the educational code. Now, Anna will review the lens from the ELA-ELD framework.
Thank you, Graciela. So let's dig into comprehensive ELD. There are two settings of comprehensive ELD, an integrated setting and a designated setting. This description comes from Chapter 2 of the ELA-ELD framework. With integrated ELD, where ELD occurs throughout the entire curriculum and the life of the school, we ensure that students are supported with the language scaffolding and support to be able to participate equally, and where they are supported to gain access to all of the content that is being taught by the strategies designed to make it comprehensible. The focus is on the literacy or content standards, with the ELD standards supporting in tandem. In designated ELD, a protected and designated time where the teaching and learning of English is the focus, we focus on specific language related to being able to participate in learning and the life of the school. And ELs learn specifically how English works, its rules, its structures, and they have time and support to practice and master the language. The focus is on the ELD standards, and they have time and support. The focus is on the ELD standards. Teachers are strategic in building the ELD standards into and from content to help ELs develop the critical language needed for content learning in English. What's important here is that ELD is the shared responsibility of all educators, the shared responsibility across content areas and classes. And at its heart, it's a commitment to standards-based instruction. So what does it look like? Integrated and designated ELD have a dynamic relationship where designated ELD serves two purposes. Designated ELD can be designed to prepare for, which means to pre-teach or front-load the language students will need for integrated ELD. Designated ELD can be designed in response to, which means addressing the language students need based on how they responded during integrated ELD. Designated ELD should not be taught in isolation of integrated ELD. The time and focus of the instruction for this designated time matters. The implications here are that teachers are observing and monitoring how ELs are engaging with the grade level content, as well as teachers truly understanding the ELD standards to best amplify language development for their students. Oh, let me go back one. Okay. This slide helps you visualize these two components in another way. During integrated ELD, educators provide meaningful access to grade level academic content. The content standards drive the instructional focus, with the ELD standards used to support. During designated ELD, educators develop students' English proficiency by targeting specific ELD standards. The ELD standards drive the instructional focus, with content standards used to support. There are three key responsibilities for what must be provided for English learners in a comprehensive ELD Tier 1 program. I've already shared two of the components, integrated ELD, which is access to content, and designated ELD, which is teaching English. A third component, the language to participate, ensures equal interaction and participation for our ELs. All three components are critical as they collectively ensure that language is not a barrier, that ELs are provided access to the academic curriculum, and that ELs acquire academic English rapidly, efficiently, and effectively. And over the next 3 slides, I will talk about each of the components and share examples. So for integrated ELD and access to content, we must provide meaningful access to the content. This entails using a variety of strategies designed to make the content comprehensible. So graphics, visuals, labels, gestures, realia, and hands-on experiences. These are planned for and built into instruction during integrated ELD. For interaction, oops, I think it skipped a little bit. I'm going to go, there we go. For interaction and participation, we need to support ELs to develop the language they need to participate. This entails providing language support through the use of graphic organizers, a focus on targeted language functions, differentiated sentence frames and sentence starters, and by explicit instruction to engage in academic discourse, including a focus on academic English. These are planned for and built into instruction across the curriculum and throughout the day through integrated ELD. The language functions and forms needed to interact and participate are also practiced and focused on in designated ELD. And then for designated ELD and teaching English, we need to teach how English works. This involves explicit instruction and focus on learning and mastering the structures and rules of how English works through content-based designated ELD that focuses on grammatical structures, language functions, and providing lots of oral practice and application. Instruction is geared to the language needs of ELs given their English proficiency level and assessed need, and is delivered through daily designated ELD for students grouped by that language need. So remember that these 3 critical components of ELD, through them, we have to provide meaningful access and to the full curriculum, support equal participation, and teach English. Integrated ELD focuses on supporting ELs to comprehend and gain access to the content and the curriculum, and on providing the language support to enable ELs to participate in life and learning activities and the tasks of the classroom. Designated ELD takes place in tandem with the explicit focus on teaching how English works, on developing proficiency and mastery of English, and on how it works and supporting the development of English that supports active and equal participation in the curriculum and life of the classroom and school. That middle component, interaction and participation, is why ELD exists, ensuring that all ELs, regardless of their language levels of English, have equal access and the language to engage and participate. To give you an example of the critical component of the language to participate, we will show one example. This is a short video introducing the language function cause and effect, utilizing a language function wall. Pay attention to how students are engaged with task and content and the different scaffolds provided to them.
When the teacher is ready to start the unit, they're going to introduce that language function at the language function wall and get the kids practicing it right away. But we want them to practice with familiar concepts.
What do you see happening in this picture?
He's touching the alarm.
He's touching the alarm, right? He's late. He slept through his alarm.
In this case, the teacher used the ideas of turning on and off a light switch or waking up late to discuss the consequences of those effects.
What could be the effect?
You might be late for school.
You might be late for school. What's mom or dad probably going to say to you?
They'll say, get up, you're not going to have any breakfast.
Yeah. Are they going to be very happy?
No.
These are things that they'd all experience, so they can practice that higher order analytical cause and effect language function with familiar content.
Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Cause and effect.
She also used a chant, a fun way to infuse that cause and effect language into the lesson.
Each partnership is going to get one card. You have to figure out, are you the cause, why it happened, or are you the effect, what happened? So first you have to think about, do you have the cause or effect, and then you have to find the matching partner.
Oftentimes you'll see games that are designed for producing and teaching that language function.
Oh, someone already found a match. If you find a match, take a seat and start using those sentence frames.
It's raining.
If you go fishing,
Then you need an umbrella. Because we go to school, we can go to college.
Hopefully that the video gave you a better idea of what it means when we were talking about providing the language to participate during ELD instruction. And now I will pass the session back to Graciela.
Thank you, Anna. I'm seeing a lot of turning up the volume, so I'm thinking maybe the video was not heard. Is that what I'm gathering? Should we have a little bit of time.
I think people heard it. I
You
see
did?
a lot of
Okay.
responses. Yeah, and if people couldn't hear it, it is lower than the speakers. So feel free to try to turn up your volume. We're optimized on our end.
Awesome.
There's also access to the video in the slide deck that you get access to.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for the good comments. It is definitely a way of using language to engage students, and repetition and chants is one of the ways. So thank you, Anna. Okay. Yes, you will have access to the slide deck, and the slide deck has the link to the video, which is an excerpt that we pulled from a training video. So that's why you see the person at the corner. Okay, so in this slide, we invite you to continue to think about your lens. As you heard Anna describe the 3 critical components of ELD, what might you need to support the implementation of the comprehensive English language development program that multilingual English learner students need? Through your lens, as you think about how we have explained integrated and designated ELD as tier 1, let's think about, what resources might you need. So we have prepared a Padlet, and we will invite you to think about these questions from your personal lens and your purpose, and to grow your own capacity. This Padlet was put together by the regional English learner specialists that are across California. We're in region 3 in Sacramento, and there's 11 divided by 11 regions. And so this Padlet was elaborated with the thought of ELD as tier 1 and what is comprehensive ELD. You're going to find a lot of resources that we think are really meant to support our system. There are 19 rows, and I hear that from this group you use Padlet a lot. So we're going to, it says 2 minutes, we're going to extend the time for you to take a look at the Padlet, and please jot down anything that you want to remember, come back to. I think you can mark it with a little heart or star, and think about what resources might you use to enhance the ELD program at your site or system that you support. We're going to extend our time to 5 minutes, and so please take a moment to explore the Padlet. Thank you for the great comments in the chat. You have access to this Padlet, and I know that Becky and the team will be placing this Padlet within the other Padlets. And we also have the rest of the resources available. This Padlet is meant to be for comprehensive English language development, like I said. And so any additional resources will be added to a landing page that we'll be sharing shortly. Thank you. Awesome. So we have, Anna is dropping a document that we prepared for you based on your roles. And so as we think about building our own capacities, because that is also an important aspect, that we are also learners in this aspect. And as Anna and I and the multilingual team, alongside with the SCOE team, train on the EL roadmap implementation, we always wear the hat of the learner and how we are continuing to build our capacity in terms of how we support our systems. So in building your own capacity in how to best understand the needs of all those around you, thinking about the integrated and designated ELD as Tier 1 instruction, and a final reminder that ELD is an opportunity for English learner students to develop the language of English while they are concurrently building content knowledge. Depending upon the ELD standards, and they're dependent on this, and they also, in terms of their English learner proficiency levels and descriptors and levels of support. They are required of every classroom teacher who has one single English learner in the classroom. So we invite you to look at this resource that we put together in terms of the roles that we play, and then the aspects of what might be included in this resource. Okay. In your respective roles. So I see a question as to which document am I referring to? And I'm referring to, let's see, the comprehensive ELD perspectives by leading roles. That's the document that I am referencing. I see that we have, so there it is. I put it in the chat for you. Okay. So we know that the coach will, it's about the coaching, the co-designing, leveraging the resources, providing professional development, co-teaching. The site administrator will work towards the allocation of the resources, the aspect of how do we implement school-wide and how do we prioritize. So each one of the roles that we play will have a greater and different in terms of emphasis of what we do. Okay, so in closing, integrated ELD occurs throughout the day across all content areas. Teachers are responsible for embedding language development strategies that help ELs access and engage with academic content. Designated ELD is scheduled, protected time explicitly focused on building the English language skills that multilingual English learners need to succeed in the academic content. Alignment with the EL roadmap, principles of comprehensive ELD reflects on principle 2 of the roadmap, ensuring intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access. It is also interrelated to principle 1, where it is about valuing the cultural and linguistic assets that our students bring to the classroom. Tier 1 ELD ensures that all English learners are part of the general education program. It is not isolated, and it is not an add-on, but a central component of equitable instruction. Lastly, while English learners may benefit from intervention, these are supplemental and cannot replace the high-quality Tier 1 instruction. Interventions should address specific targeted needs while building on the foundation established during the comprehensive ELD Tier 1. We have a final landing page, what we call a landing page that includes the Padlet and the resources shared. And I know you have some questions, but before we go there, we'd like to invite you to a waterfall chat. And if you haven't done one, it's basically we ask this question, and then when we say the keyword, such as waterfall, then you all hit enter. And so the question is, think about your school or system. What does Tier 1 integrated and designated ELD mean to you? Please type your response, but do not hit enter until the signal word. And that way all responses fall into the chat at the same time, providing the flow of an effective waterfall. Okay. Waterfall, you may hit enter now. Awesome. The allocation of the services. Thank you. This is coming really fast and beautiful. Across the curriculum, providing comprehensive ELD, an environment where all students, my goodness, this is really fast. So wonderful. Lots of equity words. Thank you, Mr. Cueva. Okay. Thank you. Anna is dropping in the chat this professional development that we have across the state with the EPIC grant. And you're going to find a link to several things. One is what we call the SCOE, the Sacramento County Office of Education EPIC catalog. And that is offerings that we do through Sacramento County. We are Zone A. And then there's the next one called EPIC offerings across California. And you find the zones A through D in terms of all about English language acquisition programs and training that is needed to do that effectively. So we invite you to take a look at that. And I know we had some questions that I pulled, and I think we have time to go over them.
And we can begin with your questions that you pulled, or I'm happy to help guide those as well. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And we are just going to, put up a survey for everyone so that we can make sure they fill it out. So just give me a moment here.
Absolutely.
There we go. All right. All right. So if you would please fill out the survey, we'll drop the link in the chat. And thank you, Graciela and Anna, for that amazing presentation. It's so nice to have 15 minutes left for questions because we have lots for you. Graciela, were there some that you wanted to pose first, and then I can pick up where you leave off?
Thank you, Jessica. I picked one at 1041 from Melinda. About what about our ELs who have learning challenges? I have seen them stuck with the LPAC, and it gets harder and harder for them to move out and from under it. So that, Melinda, you're bringing up a very important aspect that we are seeing, and that's why we have this effect of long-term English learners. So the page 20 of the ELD standards really calls out what students can do at those levels. So becoming familiar with the LPAC levels and the proficiency levels with the ELD is an important aspect for what we have noted as we work through and with schools. And so students who are struggling, they should have a student support team look into it, into what needs they have, and see if our system has been responsive to their needs and see what is missing. Often what we find is that perhaps the integrated ELD is happening, but without the ELD standards. And therefore, if we're not seeing that integration of these standards, then maybe we're not necessarily serving our English learners as adequate as we should. So we recommend investing in looking into what is our system doing with that integration, and then figuring out, also looking at the individual students as to what is in their needs, because then we would need to move into tier 2 intervention and tier 3 as adequately. But it is important to monitor the student progress.
Okay.
And I hope that answered the question. Anything to add, Anna?
I just added it to the chat that integration you're speaking to provides context to the language, because language is a meaning-making resource. So if they're separated, integrated, designated, they're having a hard time making those connections.
And that leads us to the question I pulled at 10:54 a.m. from Becky, EL coach from Ukiah. And so the question is, does this mean you are required to solely use an adopted ELA curriculum design or designated ELD component, or does this allow for well-developed lessons that were created to target the ELD standards? Excellent question, Becky. So there is, this is an aspect of the compliance and efficacy, right? So compliance-based, under the Title III, we are to adopt a curriculum, and a curriculum that also speaks to that designated ELD. However, you are absolutely correct in terms of this well-developed lessons and this aspect of how do we do the into and to the core content. And so what we have seen as effective is a combination of the two, where we are integrating that content, and we know that there's no perfect adopted curriculum. So we do need to be knowledgeable and build our skills as professionals in terms of how are we adding on, and very importantly, being responsive to the students that are in front of us, because not one student group is the same, especially when we talk about English learners. We have such broad diverse typologies, including dually identified students, newcomers, long-term ELs, students with interrupted schooling. So the diversity goes on, and we have every student group that is part of the English learners. So it is very important that we are high skilled. We become skilled in terms of how do we continue to build those lessons and build it from into and through content, so that then the student is understanding this aspect of how are we preparing them for the lessons, or reviewing for them in terms of those important aspects that we covered in the lesson.
Okay, wonderful. We do have a few more questions that I can throw your way. Do you have any recommendations for assessments and progress monitoring for English learners?
The state has developed interim assessments for ELD, and I think that they could be better used and more widely used, and they are available, like we have the CASP and under the CASP umbrella. And so we would recommend to look into the interim LPAC assessments that are, basically point directly into the LPAC task types. They're embedded with the ELD standards, and they also point to the skills that the students need in order for them to be successful. Anything to add, Anna? Please feel free to.
I would also say check your adopted curriculums, because as a coach, that's the first thing I went to, is see what you already have in your system, because it has to have some type of language workshop with assessments that'll help you monitor. And that's that daily formative assessment type of monitoring that are connected to the ELD standards directly.
Okay. Okay, great. There was a question about videos. The participants found the videos extremely helpful, and a further question of whether any videos exist that demonstrate how to implement the two different types or approaches to ELD in the classroom, integrated and designated, and where can they go?
Oh, there's several, quite a bit actually. We're in the time of information, and I think the challenge is knowing where the good information is. I think that's the main challenge. So a couple of things come to mind. One is the California Department of Education has created various videos with Wested that are available on the website, and I can send that to your way so that then you can share those, or we can actually we did a landing page for this PD, and that I think could be placed on your Padlet, and we'll add it to our landing page of videos. So that's one. And then the other is the SEAL, the Sobrato Early Academic Language team that has more than 100 schools modeled after their original model, has a YouTube channel full of videos of integrated and designated. It's very specifically for elementary. If you don't know about that model, it was created with the aspect of how to prevent long-term English learners, and focus on K3 in educational system for English learners. And so this program, from its original time, it became so successful that when the students were getting to the 4th grade, the teachers requested that they continue that model, 4th grade and beyond. And now it's gone all the way to 6th grade, because the students were getting to the teachers very well prepared, and the teachers did not feel that they were ready for the skill level that these kids came, how they came with, and how they were prepared. So 2 resources that come to mind, the CDE, as well as the SEAL YouTube that we'll share with you in that landing page.
Okay, wonderful. We have another question that asks if you could speak to reclassification of English learners who receive SPED services.
So the students who are, we call them dually identified, because they are identified as English learners, meaning that they need language acquisition support and linguistic support. And then they've also been identified through the process in our educational system through additional exams that they have a need in special education. And so these kids are dually identified, and so they have the right to both services. And so the reclassification process and criterion remains the same. It doesn't change for our students who are duly identified. What changes is how we provide, what kinds of resources, not resources, but supports we provide for them throughout the instructional day, as well as when they take these high stakes exams. So there's a matrix under CASP that speaks to the modifications, accommodations, and it's a matter of ensuring that we are looking at student-to-student case, and also ensuring that we have provided adequate resources, adequate skills and adequate day-to-day practice for them to be acquainted with those as they move into reclassification. And so the work is of both the IEP team and the multilingual services support team to ensure that this student is being serviced adequate, and that they have linguistic appropriate goals, and that reclassification is one of the goals that they're targeting and reviewed in the annual or triennial.
Okay, great. We have one final question that I believe bridges the last 2 presentations really well. The question is, how do we navigate the tiers with newcomers and lower level English learners?
Lower level meaning grade level, or student?
The question said lower level, but I'm assuming less English proficiency.
Yes,
Yeah, I was
English
thinking language level, maybe. Yeah.
language level. So the tiers do apply. Again, it is essential that we have a clear understanding of when a newcomer comes to us, even at the younger grades, if they have literacy in their first language. That is an essential aspect as to how we go about providing that evaluation, and that aspect of how we understand where the student is in order for us to then intervene adequately and provide those supports. As we know, a student who comes to us and knows how to read, we learn how to read once. Even it's the matter of learning the aspects of how English works and have the adequate instruction to learn the English language and how they could transfer that over. If a newcomer doesn't have that, then the trajectory of that student is going to be longer, and how we go about that instruction. However, tier 1 is an aspect that needs to be considered from the start. And then, of course, the tier 2 and tier 3 would apply in terms of how we go about supporting them. For the students who have been with us, and perhaps most of our English learners were born in the United States and have gone through our system. For those students, it is important to look at the time that they have been in our system and monitor their progress. And if they're not making adequate progress, then a student study team should really look at what is a need and distinguish between linguistic support or if it's something else that the student might not be capturing, and especially if it's in their first language, right? If we are able to provide that, many times we do to the extent possible, but it is important that we continue to see student-to-student base and that we insert those aspects of up to what point do we consider our students for additional supports.
And can I add on to
Please.
it's just that reminder too of high quality tier 1 instruction that all of our English learners have rights to. And so looking back, please look back at that page 20 that Graciela shared earlier in the presentation. And then I also would encourage you to look at chapter 6 in the ELD standards, because those are those considerations for foundational skills when we're thinking about newcomer students and thinking about maybe where they're at in their home language really does help you determine what you want to do next as far as the next need. So that would be my add.
Jessica, I do see some questions about dual language, but I also see we have one more minute. And I also see a question about training. So we work with the SEAL team, and they are training with us. So do look at the catalog that we shared in terms of dual language programs and the program models. We do have training that speaks to dual language programs and program models. So please do look into that. If not, reach out and we can support you in that, in what PD is available. Okay, thank you very much. These are excellent questions, and I see the questions keep coming. So hopefully we can capture them, and we will do our very best to respond to you.
Well, wonderful. Thank you all. And thank you, Graciela and Anna, for that wonderful presentation. To our attendees, we'll be taking another 10-minute break. But before we do, hopefully you had a chance to take that survey. If you haven't, we'll drop the link in the chat again. Please stay tuned for our next speaker, Dr. Dale Webster, presenting on intensifying instruction through differentiation in Tier 1. And we will meet back here at 11:40 a.m. PST. See you then.